right, Claudia, can you hit record as well? You already on it. Sweet. Owen, dude, first of all, I gotta ask you a serious question. Dude, how do you get the veins popping out of your arms
Mm, I
so
just
heavily on?
I just gave up food.
Yeah, tracking the macros. It's all about the macros.
I've kind of always had those. I started lifting when I was like 10 years old, so I think that probably has something to do with it.
Got it. What does your diet look like?
Super simple, dude. I just don't do fried foods. I don't do sugars, and I've been doing that for a long time. And then I only really eat 2 meals a day. So I eat at like one, then I eat at seven. Huge dinner, but mainly protein and fats only during the day, and then just a feast at night with all sorts of good carbs, good proteins, good fats. I eat organic, and that's about it. I don't drink, don't smoke, nothing like that.
Love it. Love it. So if you want to get shredded, intermittent fast and eat organic whole foods.
There you
Boom.
go.
Simple as that. Well, Owen, let's dive into it. So a lot of people on this call don't know who you are. So first of all, say, how long have you been in direct sales for? And what have you been doing thus, what sales jobs have you done before you got into insurance?
Yeah, I did. This is my 14th year in direct sales. I played college basketball and got into sales just about right after. And I got into summer alarm sales first. So I traveled around to a bunch of underwhelming places. I'll put it that way. Knocked in a lot of the hoods of America. So I sold door to door for about 3 years. I was really bad when I first started, then eventually got good, led a team at year three to do very well, and then transitioned into solar in 2017 and became one of the top producers in the solar space, and then ran big teams in solar, scaled $300 million solar teams on that side of the fence for the last 8 years, and then left that industry last year and jumped into this in December.
Nice. What'd you do your first month in this industry? Here,
47K,
47. And your biggest month was 82,
82.
82 that issue paid 82,000. And that's important. I want to touch on something you mentioned where so a lot of people look at you and they're like, Owen did 40K his first month. A few months later, he's cranking out 80. Like, and they and there's that saying where comparison is the thief of all joy, where
Mhm.
they see you getting into insurance and you may be crushing it, but they don't see the decade plus of
Right.
grind that you got into. And you made an important point where you said, "Hey, when I first got into sales, I wasn't good."
Mhm.
And so you're saying so this wasn't something that just clicked right away for you.
No, not at all. And because this was really I did high ticket sales as well for a little while in there. So this is really my fourth industry that I've sold in. And so I had a pattern and I knew how to progress through that pattern a little bit more rapidly. For example, like the first time I built a team that sold 100 million in a year, it took me 3 years. The second time it took about a year and a half. And the third time it took 7 months. So
Mm,
obviously you just get better, and part of getting better is knowing that you're not going to be good when you start, and that was the mentality that I came into this space with. I got with some people like Koski and Chase Gallagher from Zenith that were pretty darn good at selling mortgage protection, and I just did what they told me to do, and then I spent a lot of good money on good leads because I knew that that would buy me more opportunities, and I just needed opportunities to improve. So that first month I pitched just under 100 people, and after you pitch 100 people anything, especially if you're a decent salesperson, like you're going to be pretty decent at selling it. And then going into January and February, I went from bad at selling it to decent, and then in February I got pretty solid at selling. And at this point, I'm pretty darn good at selling because I've been doing it 5 months and I've done it thousands of times.
yeah, you have decade plus of sales experience to back it.
Hmm.
What does the weekly lead spend look like to allow you to hit $80,000 months?
Dude, when I first came in, so I came in obviously with a little capital, and I committed to spending 10 grand that first month because again, I was trying to buy the lessons as opposed to spending the time. I knew I could spend the money and short circuit that learning curve. So that's what I did. I spent 10K in December, just over 10. And then it started to go down from there. So the skill went up and the cost came down, right? So in January, I spent
Paying
eight.
down the ignorance debt.
Yeah, and I was. That's literally all I was doing, and it was painful. Like, don't get me wrong, it was painful, but absolutely worth it, of course. So I spent 8 in February, then down to 6 in, or no, I spent 8 in January, down to 6 in February, and then down to 4 in March. And the production has pretty much climbed the entire time.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. You didn't crank out 80 spending 800 bucks on leads. And
No.
for me, a lot of the guys on this call know this, but it was my first year spent I like that same thing. Got up to that $10,000 per month on lead spend as quickly as possible. First year
Mm,
spent a little over that, spent 130,000 on leads, was able to issue pay 548. Second year spent exact same, get the exact same lead spent 132, issue paid 780. Only
mm.
difference was skill set simply went up. And that allowed me to pay down my ignorance debt very, very quickly. Where some agents they'll break about, dude, I got 32x ROI on this lead batch. And I say, well, dog, that's good, but dude, you issue paid 7 grand. But they're
Right.
like, dude, I got a 30x lead, I got a 30x ROI. I was like, for me, I've never had a crazy ROI on my leads. Like I've always been a 5x. Some lead batches 3, 4, some 7, but like on average, averaged out at about 5. And but my overall net was, you know, I'm spending that to produce 60, 70. Would you rather make versus the guys that are having a 30x, dude, they're netted 6. Would you rather net 6,000 or would you rather net 60,000 overall? So man, that's important.
Couldn't agree more, dude. And I think that it's helpful to reframe quote unquote lead spend. Like I came from the door to door space where you literally knock on doors all day in the heat, in the cold, in the snow. Like I've knocked in 120 degrees, I've knocked in the snow. And when they told me about this industry that I could put money into a machine and get out interested people that want to buy the thing that I have to sell, like that's phenomenal to me because you're going to sell these people eventually, especially if your skill just continues to improve. So that was actually one of the things that I was most excited about coming into the space was in business, if you oversimplify it, like you have marketing, you have sales, and you have product. And in this space, if you're trying to be a business owner, product is solved because it's these ancient products that run by some billion-dollar corporations that take the best care of their customers than anybody could. So you don't have to worry about that. And then marketing is also solved. So you get to run a business only focused on sales and sales leadership and recruiting and training. And these are the things that I excel at. And marketing, I was decent at. Product, I suck at. So this solves product and marketing solved as well. You just get to put this money into a machine. Like, you know how many small business owners would kill to be able to know that if they invest $1,000 this week, they're going to be able to talk to 15 people that want to buy what they sell. Like that's not a thing. Small business owners would laugh at any of us that are crying about lead spend because they would fucking kill for that opportunity and that guarantee that they get to put money into a machine, talk to people that want to buy what they sell.
Yeah, you said something important where you said invest. And I had a one-on-one call yesterday with an agent where he's talking to me. He's like, dude, I got all these bills coming up. I got to pay my rent. I got to buy leads. I got this bill. I got this bill. I said, hold on. There's a difference between paying your bills and investing. Because if you look at lead spend as a bill that you have to pay, it's going to be hard. It's not a bill, it's an investment, and there's a big difference.
100%.
Yeah. But let's switch gears for a second, Owen, because you've managed and you've built how many sales teams at this point?
I built over 100 sales teams, but like three big ones that all netted over 1 million in a year,
Okay.
or 100 million, I should say.
So you've trained a lot of reps.
Yeah.
What would you say is a character trait that makes a rep go from average to being an animal?
The two things that I look for are integrity and ability to implement. Like if you're a good person and you want to do right at your core, that's a great point to start. And then if you have the ability to implement the teachings of the people that have come before you, I can work with you. It doesn't matter if you are dumb as a box of rocks. And some of my best people started out not necessarily the brightest crayon in the box, but they had the ability to implement at a high level. They were willing to do so, and they were hungry for the information. So I think there's an overwhelmingly large amount of information that we have access to at our fingertips like we never had before. And the ability to implement that information is at like an all-time low. So if you're the type of person that can hear something, spend very little time wondering if, just get the what and the how solved for you so you can focus on the now, which is the doing of the action that will move you towards the purpose that you're trying to accomplish. You get to separate yourself very, very quickly. So that's what I'm looking for if I'm going to work with somebody.
Yeah, man. And we hire a lot of people and we bring a good amount of people into this where they've never been 1099 sales before. And
Mm.
they've been an employee, they've been told what to do their entire working career. So how do you switch them from an employee mindset and switch them to create them to be a top closer?
Dude, that's one of the best questions I think I've ever been asked because 91% of this country, I don't know if you guys know, but 91% of this country works for somebody else.
Yep.
And 99% of the country was raised to work for somebody else, like by the school systems, by their middle class parents, who my parents were middle class and no knocking yours, but they didn't set us up for this shit. They really didn't. And if you're going to teach somebody how to do it, just identifying that and helping them understand that, like, look, you were raised to be something that you no longer want to be. And in my opinion, this is the number one reason why people fail at 1099 sales. It's not because the physical skills of the job or the verbal skills of the job are that incredibly challenging. It's because they were raised to be one way their whole life, and now you're trying to get them to be another way. So if I had to, which I've never done, but like off the top of my head, if I had to break down the steps, it would be identifying the fact that this is how you were raised, this is how you spent, 25 years or 30 years becoming and being trained to be. And now we have to separate from that and try to become something totally different. So I don't think many people, when they start this quote unquote job, think that way or have that conversation with the leader. Like they're not even in that frame of mind. They just think this is a new job. It isn't that. It isn't that at all. So understanding that it's not, and then again, off the top of my head, dude, studying businesses, like studying the actual way to operate a business and the mentality of a business owner, as opposed to just the sales job. Like, yes, the sales skills are necessary, but you'll find very quickly that if you don't have a business owner's mentality, that this is not the role for you and this is not the opportunity for you. So just breaking down and actually understanding that now I've got this skill on how to sell people insurance, but now I have to learn to be a business owner. So we could do a whole class on how to be a business owner, but just identifying it and actually pursuing knowledge in that lane is very different than just trying to become a good salesperson.
Yeah. And it also comes down to, man, that was well said. I couldn't agree more. And it also comes down to holding yourself accountable
Mhm.
in your belief level because I'm a big Elon Musk fan, and I think one of Elon Musk's greatest accomplishments was you can see like you just look at the guy, he's clearly an introvert. And you know, public speaking is hard for him. But he realized in order to become the person that he wanted to be, he had to break out of his shell and he had to become that face and he had to get better at public speaking. And so what are some ways that you've enabled and allowed guys in the past to get uncomfortable and break out of their shell to evolve into the person that they need to become in order to really win in this industry?
What are some ways I've helped people break out of their shell?
Yep. And just get uncomfortable
Yeah.
overall, hold themselves accountable.
I think it starts with celebrating it. Like to have the idea of shattering your comfort zone be a constant pursuit and just a piece, like an integral piece of your culture is critical. And then when it happens, when you see somebody break out of their comfort zone, celebrating it, rewarding that behavior, and then teaching them to do that with themselves. So, for example, like especially if you guys are calling aged mailers, you're hearing the word no and you're experiencing quote unquote failure all the time, far more than you are success. But failure is just an experience, and just like any other experience, if you experience it a lot or if you constantly pursue the skill of failing, like you'll get better at it. So, for example, I think, and that's one of the reasons why people fail, in my opinion, is because failure is so uncomfortable. But just teaching people to reframe failure, one of the simplest ways I've ever learned this is like start asking for things that you know you probably won't get.
Mm.
To break it down like a micro idea. Like when next time you go to Starbucks or wherever you go for your coffee, whatever your coffee is, ask them if you can have it for free and just like get used to this word of no and get used to this idea of like asking people for things that they're going to raise their eyebrows about or that they're not going to want to give you, and in public get used to being told no, because at a certain point, especially if you're actively pursuing it, like it's going to lose its power over you, and your relationship with failure is going to have such a massive impact on your success. Like my relationship with failure is, I would say it's definitely good, but compared to other people that just cold call all day, theirs is better. Like I don't have the greatest relationship with failure. This isn't one of my best skills, but I do have an above average relationship with failure. It doesn't have the power over me, and it doesn't have the power over you, Jonah, because you're good at what you do, that it does over regular people. So again, just like the skill of being a business owner, like if you look at this as like an Iron Man type thing, where it's like there's 10 skills that I need to accomplish or that I need to have like in my tool belt to accomplish the thing that I want to accomplish in this space. One of them is an elite relationship with failure. And just look at it. Like if you literally, if you write down the skills and you just ask yourself, like at the end of the day or at the end of the week, whatever it is, just occasionally check in with your relationship with failure, like 1 to 10. Where am I at with my relationship with failure? Right now, personally, mine's at about an 8. Before I started doing this, because I'd only been an executive for the last 8 years and I hadn't knocked many doors, I hadn't heard the word no very often. It dipped from like a 9 when I was banging doors all the time. By the time I came into this space, my relationship with failure, my skill in that lane was like a 5. And I had to like peel back the layers and put back on the armor and build that skill back up. Otherwise, I would have got my ass kicked.
That was well stated. Have an elite relationship with failure. And it goes back to what you were saying earlier, Owen, about the school system. And the school system, dude, it instills us in our brain, in our minds, that failure's bad. You
Yeah.
can't make mistakes. Don't mess up. But you look at any successful individual, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Steve Jobs, these guys all failed 100 times to build what they built. And
Mhm.
that's the best way to learn. And so a lot of times, I mean, I don't know if you guys are like me, but I'm pretty stubborn. I'm pretty stubborn, pretty hard headed. So there's the hard way to learn and there's the harder way. And so a lot of times for me in my past, like I've had to learn the harder way by messing it up, tweaking, adjusting, and moving forward. But it's how you it's what your relationship is with failure. So when you fail with something, do you beat yourself up about it or do you learn from it? Because also the definition of insanity is continually doing the same thing over and over again. So having the not only the ability to fail and come back, but also having the humility to analyze yourself and your current situation and be honest with yourself and realize, hey, I may not be where I want to be. I'm not getting good results. What do I need to tweak and adjust in order to increase my progress and get to the place where I want to be?
Yeah, you guys are all pretty smart on this call. Like you're in this opportunity. You've probably all sold at least a few policies at this point. So like you're an above average human being. And when above average human beings fail, they figure out a better way to do the thing that they're failing at. And for example, this is how important I think this is. I have a 3-year-old son, and at the end of every day, I ask him, "What did you fail at today?" And he barely knows what it means, but he's starting to understand what it means. And I'll probably do it for the rest of his life while he lives under my roof. I want to know what he failed at today, and then we'll talk about how to improve the skill. But if we're not failing, we're not growing. Like we're not pushing that comfort zone. Everybody talks about getting outside your comfort zone. Few people talk about, just fucking fail. Like that's what getting outside your comfort zone means. You don't expand outside your comfort zone, get super uncomfortable, and all of a sudden realize like you're a genius outside your comfort zone. You're not. You're gonna fail over and over and over and over. And that's where the genius is born.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so you're starting to, we were on the phone shortly before this call for like 30 seconds, but you told me you're starting to recruit and bring people into this industry and build your own sales team.
Correct.
Man, I'm excited to see that. What are some of your goals with building here in the virtual side of things in insurance?
The number one goal is to build the best product that I'm capable of building. So again, from the business owner's mentality, marketing, sales, and product, as a leader, I look at it as a business. And as a leader, my business is the experience, like my product that I'm putting on the field is the experience that I provide for my people. That's my product. And in business, if your product is unequivocally one of the best in the space, then it's really, really hard to fail. So I'm hyper focused on delivering a world class product for the people that trust me with their livelihoods. And if I had to sum up my goal, it would just be that to build the best possible product that I'm capable of building as a business owner and a leader, with product being the experience that the people who commit to working with me have on a day to day basis.
Man, as well said. What are some leadership tips and pieces of advice that you've learned from leading sales teams in the past? that you'd give to anybody on this call looking to build an agency?
Yeah. I think all the classic ones, most of them are very, very true. Like leading from the front is obviously a critical piece to it. I didn't do this a lot towards the end of my solar career because I had, quote, call it success, a lot of large teams and a lot of big leaders underneath me. So I hadn't sold for a long time, and I would still have plenty of success. But I recognized a completely different animal in myself when a familiar animal, but a different animal that I had seen for the last 8 years, when I started selling in this space again. Because I hadn't sold anything for like 8 years. And for the first 7 years of my career, that's all I did was sell. So reestablishing and reconnecting with that animal has helped me tremendously in this space and has also reminded me and kind of reinvigorated me on the sales space. It's just reminded me that you don't want to be too far from the field and you've got to stay relevant. And if you want your people to trust and to believe you and to allow your words to impact them on a high level, which is what every leader hopes their words do, every word that you say is going to have twice the weight if you're still relevant in the field. Now, at a certain point,
Yes.
at a certain point, at Joe's point, or Jonah, I'm not sure if you sell much anymore because you've got a big agency. Like at a certain point, there's no longer that option. So I am not saying Joe should be dialing every day by any means. Like at a point that door closes. But you
Let's get
want to,
Joey B back on the phones. Get
yeah,
him back.
but you want to keep that door open for as long as possible, not just to make you look cool, but if you really want to maximize your impact, you want to stay relevant for as long as possible. Because I can spend half the time telling somebody the same information that somebody else would spend double the time telling somebody the same information. And because I'm relevant in the field, my impact will be 2x versus their impact they spent double the time on.
Yeah. Where we've all heard the saying, your agents, they don't do what you say, they do what you do.
Right.
And one of the best, honestly, one of the best leadership pieces of advice I've ever been given was my dad told me this.
Mhm.
This a 7-year-old kid. He said, Jonah, I'm never gonna ask you to do something that I either haven't done or I'm not willing to do.
That's
And
fire.
so there's that aspect of it where you want to have that respect, and you want to have weight behind what you're saying when you're training. But in addition to that, dude, it's nearly impossible for you to have empathy or for you to understand or effectively train your agents if you haven't walked the walk and you haven't done it. And I was reading a John Maxwell the other day, and he was talking about they did a survey, and they surveyed 400 leaders and employees. And you may have heard this, you may have not, but they said, what are the best ways you can prove yourself as a leader? And they asked the leaders that, and the leaders said, we need better systems, we need better tech, we need better processes. And the employees had a completely different response. They said, my boss or my leader, they need to improve their leadership and increase their emotional intelligence, which is very interesting. And it's really like what John Maxwell also talked about. He said that the three feelings that are created by a leader that you love to follow is you feel valued, you feel inspired, and you feel empowered. And the only way to really do that and connect with someone and allow them to do that is have that empathy and know exactly what they're going through because you've walked that walk and because you've been there and you've been in the trenches.
Couldn't agree more, man. 100%. I've got three more that I thought of while you were talking that I built my entire leadership career on. If you want me to go down that road, it'd be 5 minutes.
Please do. Yes.
So my top three, and it starts with the understanding that your people are going to do double what you do poorly and half of what you do well. And this is
Mm,
scientific fact that I've seen throughout every team I've ever led. If you look at, in solar, you have district managers and you have reps. The managers are obviously like the in the field leaders. The per rep average in those are on those teams is almost always half of the leader's personal production because they do half of what the leader does well and double what they do poorly. So if you want to really evaluate whether you're ready to lead or not, take a piece of paper, draw a line down the center of the paper, identify all of your low class habits, identify all of your high class habits, and then remove half of your high class habits from the piece of paper, like erase them, and double your low class habits. and then look at what's left on that paper and ask yourself if somebody with these habits can succeed. And if the answer isn't yes, you're probably not ready to be an effective leader. So that was very effective for me, understanding it through that frame. The second one would just be obsessive self integrity. Like I mentioned, integrity is one of the things that I look for in people, but especially in leaders. I want to work with the type of person that is obsessed with the commitments that they make to themselves. Because obviously, if you're keeping your commitments to yourself, it's almost impossible to break with other people as well. So that checks both of those boxes. And what I mean by that, guys, if there's any lack of clarity there, I'm looking for the type of person that if they tell themselves, not anybody else, if you wake up in the morning, you tell yourself you're going to brush your teeth 3 times and it's 10 p.m., you're about to pass out, and you've only done it twice, and you're sleeping in bed, and you think of this thing that you told yourself you would do 16 hours ago, you get your ass out of bed and you brush your teeth a third time just because you told yourself you would do it. Not because there's anybody watching, just simply because you told yourself you would do it. Because what happens when you do that is it's going to start building this momentum of reputation with yourself. And in my opinion, the most important relationship you have on the planet is the relationship with yourself. And if you think about like your best friend, and then think about what would happen if that best friend started lying to you on a regular basis. How long would it be if that best friend lied to you multiple times a day? Somehow they got in your ear, they called you, they texted you, they just lied to you, told you some bullshit multiple times a day. How long would it be until you wanted nothing to do with that friend?
Pretty quickly.
It wouldn't take very long.
Yeah.
It tarnish and ruin that relationship, right? So, in my opinion, the most important relationship is the one with yourself. And if you're lying to yourself by breaking your commitments with yourself, that's an individual that has a very shitty relationship with themselves. And if they don't
Mm.
have a good relationship with themselves, they're not going to have a good relationship with their people long term. And that will be sussed out, that their people will feel that. But whereas vice versa, and this is part of the reason why I think fitness is pretty important, because people that aren't in shape, they love to talk about being in shape, or they love to talk about changing their shape or their diet or something like that. But they're constantly telling themselves, I'm going to do this, I should do this, I should do this, I'm going to do this. And they don't do it. Whereas one of the nice things about being fit is when you're fit, you're known immediately when you walk into a room. You're like, well, that guy probably keeps his commitments to himself because otherwise he wouldn't be able to look like that. You can't fake that. You can't buy that. You can't fake or buy the way that Jonah looks. Like that's somebody that gets in the gym 4, 5, 6 times a week, maybe 7 times a week to look the way that he looks. And that's a commitment that is not easy that he keeps to himself, which immediately gives him status and immediately makes me trust him more than the average person because I can tell that Jonah can trust himself to keep his commitments to himself. So that's the second one. And then the third one is I'm just going to breeze over this. It's an hour long training, but it goes back to a little bit of what you said, Jonah, where the employees want the leaders to understand them. In my opinion, the single best way to lead somebody is to find out exactly where they want to go, to identify where they're at, and then to lay out the path between those 2 points and ask permission to hold that person accountable to the actions required to get there. So, Jonah, if you were brand new with me starting, one of the first conversations that we would have is an hour-long conversation that I call the way, where I would understand by the end of the conversation exactly where you want to go, why you want to get there, how it's important to you. I would understand everything about it. And then now that I have a great idea of where you want to go, now I can lead you at a high level. I have to earn your trust so you can trust me to lay out the actions and you can follow those actions to get to where you want to go, but it all starts with the way understanding where you want to go. And I'm literally going to have a file on you if you work with me. And I'll tell you this, all the Zenith guys know this. I have a file on all these guys that I've sat down with and had one-on-ones with over the last 30 days because I want to know what their dream outcome is. Like I want to know best case, what does this look like for you over the next 12, 24, 36 months? Like where do you want to go? Because I want to be responsible as much as I can be for helping get them there. And I do that by understanding where they want to go, laying out the actions, getting them to agree that these are the actions that will get you there. Like, is it unreasonable to believe that you would get there if you did these exact actions? Then yes. Okay. Is it okay for me to hold you accountable to these actions? Yes, now I have your permission to the actions that'll get you where you want to go, not where I want you to go. It's where you want to go. So those are that's really like the overarching theme of my entire approach to leadership is getting somebody where they want to go, not where I want them to go, and checking in with them along the way to make sure that they're actually on track and consistently updating that with each monthly one-on-one to change the actions if needed, to update the destination if needed, because people's destinations change, like the things that they value change. But I always want to know what it is, and I want to be the one to help you get there as much or more than anybody else in your life.
Yeah, man, that was well said. Yeah, get them to where they want to go, not where you want them to go,
100%.
and keeping the promises you made to yourself. Where I think you may agree or disagree with this, Owen, but it's I'm trying to put this into words, but the power of belief is so important. In my opinion, that's the number one determining factor on if someone is successful or not. If you believe you can do it, you're right, you can do it. If you believe you can't, you can't. And that's what makes or breaks a sale. That's the difference of calling a lead and Milo's on my screen, so I'll pick on Milo. Where if I call Milo and like in my head I'm dialing Milo as a lead, I'm thinking, oh, like I hope Milo needs life insurance. Dude, they filled it out. They asked for it. Versus having that thought process versus the thought process of, okay, well, I'm going to help and serve Milo, and it's simply a matter of how am I going to position it, how I'm going to leverage the financial inventory, and what product or service is simply going to make the most sense in order to help and serve Milo and his family. And so, what would you say? Because I think if we're being honest, a lot of us on this call, especially when you're brand new, whether you're a brand new agent or you're brand new getting to a leadership position, we struggle with confidence and we struggle with self-belief in ourselves. So what would you say to the people watching this right now if they are struggling with confidence to instill more confidence in them and allow them to believe in themselves more?
I think that's one of the reasons why the self integrity piece is so important because I
Yeah.
was asked, I've been accused of being confident for a long time. And I was asked about 5 years ago by one of my closest friends who had worked for me for almost 8 years at that point. He said, like, how are you so confident? Like, how do you build that confidence? And I didn't have an answer for him. And I felt bad and I felt inadequate because I didn't have an answer. So I did some real work on it. And I realized that going back to that self integrity piece, like that's why that is so critical, not just for leaders, but also for producers, because I believe now that confidence is built by obsessively keeping your commitments to yourself because you're building that reputation as I'm the type of person that can be trusted. I'm the type of person that does what he says he's going to do. And even when it gets hard, if I see a way out or if I understand the actions, because I had a good leader lay out those actions for me, if I understand the actions required to help me, I will perform those actions. And when I continue to do that, even if the results aren't coming yet, I can still build confidence with no results. And being able to build confidence in a vacuum, like a resultless vacuum, is a pretty precious skill, in my opinion. And I think that that's built by keeping those commitments relentlessly, obsessively to yourself. Even if you go 3, 4, 5 days a week without selling, as long as your commitments are being kept, you'll still be the type of person that keeps those commitments. And that person by default is going to win eventually. Like it's inevitable. I was just talking to my team about this before this call. It's inevitable that you win if you perform the right actions for a long enough time period. The goal is to just be able to perform them for a long enough period to where you get good enough to where you start to get the results that you want. And as long as you do that, like you can't lose. And that's one of the toughest parts about this space is there's this question mark of like, am I going to fail? Is this going to work? Am I going to run out of money? Is this even real? Like, what does all this look like? What does all this mean? So if you can remove the lack of clarity around it by just knowing the actions to take and obsessively taking those actions and knowing that you're the type of person to take those actions no matter what, no matter how it feels, you're still going to act and you can dominate those thoughts that are trying to stop you from doing those actions. Then that's a confident person. Like you can't go through that and do that and not come out the other side confident.
Man, absolutely. I asked this on stage, Owen, and you gave me a great response. So feel free to give the same response, or if you want to phrase it differently, up to you. But the for those that missed it at Summit, I asked you, I said, how do you win on a high level in business and have success without that being detrimental towards your family and hurting your relationship with your wife, your kids, and everything else. So if you wouldn't mind sharing again.
Yeah, it's the same answer. I'm awake for 17 hours a day. I spend 5.5 with my family. I have 1.5 hours for my health and for my fitness. And when I say health, I mean mental, physical, emotional, spiritual health, whatever your beliefs are. I believe that deserves and needs time. And then I have 10 hours for the business. So I just do a lot less, I think, than, and this is like a different, I don't want to say a new me, but this is a different approach. I've gone through the seasons where I've had a extremely robust social life, and I've gone through the seasons where I've had a bunch of different hobbies, surfing, rock climbing, and doing all these things. And I realized coming into this space for the first time that none of that shit mattered to me anymore. And you guys may or may not be in that phase, but I realized now, although I enjoy all that stuff, and there will be times in my life when I probably get back into some of them and do some of them, none of it mattered to me more than finding massive success in this new venture. And that's rock climbing and surfing and going out, like all of that stuff wasn't going anywhere. And I asked myself the question, like, if I did none of that for the next 12 months and I just built this business, is there any way that I look back on those 12 months and regret it? Like, will I regret not rock climbing for the next 12 months later in life? And the answer was no. I think the rock climb is going to be just fine. The wall's still going to be there. The waves will still be there. And that's counterculture, maybe counterintuitive to some of you who are like, I want this job for freedom and to be able to do whatever I want. I have realized that you get outsized returns from intense levels of focus. And what I mean by that is if you guys go up to like a level 8 of focus, you're going to get potentially like an 8 out of 10 return. Like maybe you'll be above average. But then at the level of 9 and at the level of 10, where you're putting in 10 hours a day, 6, 7 days a week, those levels 9 and those level 10, the results compound exponentially. Like there's so much unlocked at 9 and 10, especially when you don't have to think about whether you should be doing it or not. Meaning, I don't spend any time thinking about whether I should be rock climbing or surfing or hanging out with my friends more. I don't give a shit about any of that right now because the focus is the business and I know that I'll get outsized returns from that level of focus. So if it doesn't fall into my health, family, or work category, I'm just not doing it. And I don't have to think about it, and our mental energy is like a battery. It goes down with the decisions that we have to make every day. That's why you see Zuckerberg and Musk wearing the same thing all the time. Like they're trying to eliminate their decisions at the highest level possible. And when you can do that and just focus on a very small amount of things, if you think about all the people we're competing against on a regular basis, like you're competing against somebody, like if you're trying to be on the scoreboards or if you're trying to do this at a very high level, you're competing against somebody that's obsessively focusing on just a couple things. I promise you, at the very top, all of us are just focusing on a couple things. So if you're everywhere, you are not like this special snowflake that can be world class at 10 things. I promise. I've tried. I thought I was that. I thought I was the exception to the rule. I wasn't. It's not the case at all. But you can be world class at just a few things. So I have chosen to be world class as a father. I have chosen to have world class health. And I've chosen to be world class at this business. And I don't believe that I'm capable of being world class at more than those three things right now, or maybe ever. And that's okay. Because if I'm world class at those three things, again, asking myself at the end of the year, if I become world class at all three of those things, how do I feel about my year? I'm fucking stoked.
Yeah, man, you that was a great response. You just simply do less. Just do less than most people because there's only a few small things you can really be exceptional in life. And so, okay, this is a selfish question, but last question for you, then we'll open it up for a Q and A. What does your just workout regimen look like on a
Yeah.
weekly basis?
It's nothing fancy, man. I always keep my body guessing. I think that's been the biggest thing. I'm 37 years old, which is even weird to say. But like Jonah, I
Look like
remember,
you're 27.
yeah, well, I remember when I was like the 23-year-old hotshot at the alarm company. Like I remember that. I don't want to say it goes quickly, but it's just funny because you don't feel that different sometimes, but you do remember it. But either way, I work out. I lift weights like 5 days a week still. And my number one focus is always just failure. which obviously we've already talked about, but it's so relevant in the gym. I think the reason I've been able to, and I've looked like this, for the last 2 decades. I don't go up, I don't go down. I stay like right about the same. And the reason I've been able to maintain high levels of fitness is just because I stagger out of the gym every day. Like I empty the fucking tank. There's a saying that I use with my son. I go to zero. Like every single time in the gym, I just go to zero, and I'm in there for an hour and 20 minutes. And I have legs on my own day, or legs have their own day, and then I've got a couple days to split up the upper body, and that's constantly changing, and the rep count's constantly changing. By constantly, I mean every two, usually about every month or two, I'll switch it up. But the one thing that's been resolute throughout my entire quote unquote fitness journey that started when I was 10 years old, because I was really sick as a kid and I wanted to be not sick anymore. But it's always just been going to zero and constantly keeping my body guessing.
Mm, gotcha. And I said one more, but I gotta ask you this one more question, and we'll open up for a Q&A. Is as you were saying that, I was imagining yourself as, 20, 23-year old, 25, 30-year-old person is like, oh, were you just always this just super good physical shape, like looking like a Greek god, top sales closer guy, or is this somebody that you had to create? Did you have to create the person you are today? And if so, how did you do that?
Yeah, it all started when I was 10. Just I was a really sick as a kid. So I got really into peak performance and physical fitness and all that. And then I played basketball my whole life. And so a lot of my confidence came from like competing and winning athletics, state titles and getting a scholarship and all that. Like a lot of it came from that. And then when I got into sales, and there's a couple of you on this call that I know can relate to this. And for whether you're a girl or a guy, I bet the best looking people might be able to relate to this a little bit more than everybody else. And this is why, because I was a decent looking person and I was raised in a middle class family and I'm white. I've got some privileges. Like life wasn't that hard, to be realistic. And I never really heard no, which I didn't know. And then all of a sudden I started knocking doors and I heard no like 50 times in a day. And it almost broke me. I was like shocked. And I was like, why don't these people like me? Why isn't life going as easy as, it had been for a long time ever since I had not been sick? And that blew my mind. So I struggled for a long, long time. I was very, very bad. I almost got fired from the door-to-door company that I was working with, and nobody, gets fired from a door-to-door company. So I almost did, and I just same thing. The only reason I was able to push through was just because I went to zero and I did everything the hard way, which is a very stupid thing to do. I didn't understand that I could get lessons from people who had been there before, so I just did it the hard way, and I got my ass kicked for a very, very long time. But in the end, I was still, that guy who goes to zero, and I'll always be that person when it all. I haven't been bankrupt, but I've went broke a few times, and I've been down to zero a few times, and it's not something I'm necessarily proud of, but I'm always proud of the way that I bounced back. And now I have that reputation with myself of like, if I woke up tomorrow, my bank accounts were empty and I was somehow out of shape and, how had everything taken away from me that I have, like, I'll still go to zero to get it all back. And what I've found is that when you go to zero and you're willing to do that and you're the type of person that does that, it's almost inevitable that you end up getting what you want or at least some version of it.
Couldn't agree more. Let's open up for a Q&A. What questions y'all have, feel free to unmute or drop in the chat.
Question. I got a question. I'd really love to see how you handle objections. Can you do some rapid fire objection handling, you guys? Jonah and Owen.
Yeah, let's do it. Oh, and hey, I'm working. Can you call me later?
Yeah, let me ask you this before we start. Ben, would you like to hear how I handle objections, or would you like to hear how I prevent objections? Because I think there's,
Ah, there you go.
and I'm not
Yeah. Let's
right.
do that. Let's do that.
So, what was the? Give me an objection, like, because now we're talking about actual sales process throughout the course of the sale, right? But Ben, what's the number one objection that you run into,
Um, I'm I'm busy right now. I'm at work. I don't have time for this.
and when are you running into it on the call?
At the beginning.
At the very beginning.
hmm
What's the way that you're handling it now?
Um, well, if they don't tell me that right away, like in the first 15 seconds, I just assume they're lying. I try to just push through it.
Okay, so you just somewhat ignore it.
Yeah.
So that's my approach to.
Because we already got through a minute or two. Like you definitely can be on the phone if you would have
Right.
told me right away. But yeah, go ahead.
As far as these like early in the call objection goes, guys, that's one of the things that I really took from the door to door space. Because in door to door, you just have to be able to blow through these things because they can't leave the door. You have a little bit more leeway because I mean, they can slam it in your face, but not many people are like that big of an asshole. So on the early in the call objections, I'm looking to just say I understand and then continue to get right back into it. And I literally won't address it unless they say it like 3 or 4 times. Now, I'd rather, for the most part, and when you're talking about sales, you can kind of speak in generalities because there's always exceptions to it, right? But for the most part, I would rather ignore the objection and get hung up on than try to dive too deep into it and disrupt the sales process that I'm looking to get into. So if you say, I don't have time or I'm busy right now, I'm going to say the same thing that you guys say. Like, that's perfect, Ben. I'll be real quick with you. Let me ask you this, and then I'm just going to ask a question almost every single time. And no matter what they say, then I'm going to redirect right back into that sales flow. So we were just talking about this on the Zenith call this morning because these guys are doing aged mailers and they're responding to the person telling them, oh, I didn't send in any request for information. And we listened to a call where somebody responded to that and got in an argument with that person of whether they sent in their request for information for like 5 minutes. And it's like, that's not the goal, guys. The goal is to go from where you want to go, where you're at now, to where you want to go. And any slight variation is okay as long as you redirect and get right back to the process, right? But I'm not looking to have a conversation or acknowledge any objection until I hear it 2 or 3 times. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So even if they're at work or busy, like I'm still personally, I'm a one call closer, so I'm still going to continue to go until they're just so distracted, so clearly at work, then yeah, I might set an appointment at that point. But I'm going to tease as much information as I possibly can to get them excited about the product. And then I'm going to set an appointment on my terms, not on theirs.
And also pay attention to Owen's tone. Like he doesn't start talking faster, get flustered. He's very calm, very cool, doesn't change his mood, just retakes control of the conversation.
One thing that's always helped me with objections and along those lines is I always smile when I get them. And I didn't even realize this until people were knocking with me after I was like really good on the door. But people would just be shouting objections in my face. And like the more objections they gave me, the more I would smile. And that just really helps me control my state. It's so different than somebody just like sitting here like, yo, yeah, it's very, very different. But like if you give me an objection, even right now, I'd be like, yeah, that's fine, man. I'll just show you how it works. Like, are you the homeowner with your spouse or without your spouse, or by yourself or with a spouse? Cool. How long have you guys been in the area? Like, I'm just gonna smile every single time, and that has massive impact on your state, on your tone, and on your overall flow in the conversation, in my opinion.
So, Nick, you got a question?
Yeah, Owen, question for you on learning. So, with a bunch of different reps, I've seen reps where they only want to role play a ton of times before they get on the phones. Others want to shadow a ton of times before they get on the phones. And then other reps, they just want to get into calling immediately and they think that they don't need much training. They just need more and more and more reps and they'll eventually get it. But when you came in, obviously one thing you can do immediately is buy more leads at a higher quality to get yourself as many reps as possible. But when it came to using, Chase and Ryan Koski to help you actually learning the sales process, what is the main things that they really helped you with and that you asked for help when it came to learning this as quick as possible?
I got a script and I said that script out loud 500 times. And I did that in a few hours. It wasn't like I did it 500 times over the course of a couple of weeks. You know what I mean? Like for half a day, I said the script and did nothing else but sit there and say the script, walk around and say the script. I listened to myself say it for a very, very short period of time because with the people that you just mentioned, Nick, I'm going to lean more on the side of the person who just wants to call, right? I've been accused of, cutting corners and doing things too fast and trying to build the plane while in flight. Like that's just my nature. Now that's got a positive, it's got a negative to it. But as far as what they helped me with specifically, if you remember when Jonah asked me like what I'm looking for in an agent, when I said integrity and the ability to implement, I am a very average learner personally. Like I will learn at a very, very average rate, maybe even below average rate, as much as I hate to admit it. But I am a world-class implementer. Like once I understand it, which might take me a while, if I understand it and I understand it's going to help me, I will pivot and change like my entire approach or change who I am as a human being if I need to, if I genuinely believe the thing that you're telling me to do is going to help me. And I won't question if. So I spend very, very little time on if. So to condense the answer, Nick, I think one of the best things you can do if you're going to try to learn something new, if you're trying to teach somebody like how to learn this, is, and if I'm speaking to you as if you're a new agent, it's like, Nick, you can't spend time on if. I have done this at a very high level. This will work. All of the people that I'm working with do this at a very high level. If you do this and you practice this, you will do this at a very high level. But the longer you spend time wondering if you should do this or if you should do the practice, the worse you're going to be because it's just chipping away at your momentum and chipping away at your confidence. So spend very little time on if. Again, get somebody who can solve the what and the how. That's what Chase and Ryan did for me when I would call them. I didn't talk to them at all really before I started selling. I just said, give me the script, practice the shit out of it. I understood it. And then I started selling. I started selling at a decent clip. And then the biggest thing, for example, that jumps off the page in my brain for me when you ask, like, how do these guys help you? Is I had shitty persistency at the beginning because I got good at selling people and selling people on signing the contract, but I was missing a key element to it. And I was looking at my persistency and it was like 70%. I was like, there's got to be a way to up level this. So I called Koski, asked him that exact thing, and he told me to add a pop quiz at the end of the sales presentation, just to make sure the customer understood the information. He basically told me in my own words, after the application, they have to understand why they bought the product. Like they have to rehash that because they've forgotten. And that little tweak jumped my persistency up immediately, significantly. And I didn't take time wondering if I should do that. And the next call I was on, I did that. And every call after that, I did that. You know what I mean? So zero time on if. I'll stumble through the actual application of the implementation of the thing that I believe is now going to help me. I'll stumble through it a few times, but I'm going to do it right away. Same thing when I heard about annuities. It was like mid-January. I didn't even know what an annuity was before that. So I heard about annuities. I was like, wait, you can just set these. You can get half the commission, and it's for anybody that has money in their 401k, and they just have to be over 59 and a half. Okay, cool. Bet. Let me set some. And I stumbled and bumbled my way through a few sets. And then David Starr closed like 4 out of my first 5 sets. I was like, holy shit, this just paid for all my leads. But it was, again, just the ability to implement, act like sound stupid, fail, but not question if I should be doing this or not. So I think that's one of the biggest elements for people learning. They question if they should start, and then they question if they should continue once they start failing. And identifying that for people beforehand and pre-framing their experience. And this goes for everybody here that's going to bring on people. You got to be able to pre-frame their experience the best way you possibly can, guys, because the experience is going to be tough, just like with agents or just like with customers, I should say. You know, when you're pre-framing, I asked Ben when he said, you know, what would you say to this objection? I asked him that question. Do you want to hear what I'd say before? Or do you want to hear what I'd say after? Because I believe pre-framing is far more important. And if you guys follow me on Instagram, I've got a couple of funny videos up there of me like handling objections in a pretty decent way. But I consider all those videos actual failures. Like those are when I failed to pre-handle the objection, and then I got the objection. And I happen to have some good ones. I happen to have some good rebuttals on deck ready to go. But those all represent to me failures of mine to handle the objection before it comes up. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah.
Gabe,
Thank you.
Gabe.
Hey, Owen. I saw you post on Instagram not too long ago about your first 90 days in this business and that level of obsession. And you said that in order to be really good, every agent should go through that. Could you just talk about why you think people don't go through it and then kind of your emotions throughout the process and now looking back on it outside of your 90 days, just what that was like and why everybody should do it?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk on that. And let me read you guys this actually. And I'm going to go over this on the Pinnacle call tomorrow because they asked me to. But I want to read it to you guys anyway. This is a text message that I sent to a rep a little while back on exactly that topic. And he was talking about when he first started. And this was my response verbatim. I'm just going to read it to you. So I said, I'll encourage you to approach it, meaning the start, with a 90-day sprint mentality. Sales reps go decades without ever hitting the peak level of performance because for decades they avoid a hyper-focused sprint that would have separated themselves permanently from the pack. They work hard, not understanding that they sat there 90 days of intense focus away from what they want for decades. You just saw me do it. I did the same thing when I started in solar and it worked the same way. At any point, every salesperson with average skill, a good leader to solve the what and the how, can lock in on the now for 90 days and never be the same. It sets up everything you do for the next 10 years, but 99% will never do it because they aren't willing to put their distractions to the side to obsessively chase their best version for even 90 days. And unfortunately for them, that tells their soul a story, one that makes it clear the things that you say you want are not more important than your distractions. Food for thought.
Man, what a powerful note to end on. Let's do this. Anybody, if you're where you want to be, if you're killing it, this does not apply to you. But if you're not at a place where you want to be, whether it's personal production, whether it's being a leader, agency growth, whatever the case may be, drop an emoji in the chat if you're willing to go all out for the next 90 days. Are you willing to sacrifice the next 90 days to set up your future and get yourself to the point of where you want to be? Man, well, Owen, we're going over on time, but this was phenomenal. I'm really excited, really blessed to have you part of Pinnacle. A lot of respect for what you guys are doing, and thank you for hopping on and pouring into the troops.
Anytime, guys. Appreciate the questions. It was a pleasure to get to know you guys a little bit, and hopefully everybody got something from it. I'm sure I'll see you guys soon.
God bless.
See y'all.